A seller's market remains despite some weird tumbling Toronto home prices. Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. So glad you joined me here today. Now, the market is shifting to a buyer's market soon, like very soon, but it's not quite there just yet. And while some headlines and people you talk to, maybe in the industry or maybe people who think they're an expert in real estate, which is generally everybody now, will tell you that we're already in a buyer's market, by technicality, we're not, but it sure does feel like one, and I'll tell you why shortly, so stay to the end of this video. Now, I'll get into the definition of what a buyer's market is later, but what someone is telling you probably, about what the market is right now, is more of like their feeling about how it feels right now to be transacting in the real estate market. And I too can tell you that, it feels like a buyer's market. It really does, especially in a lot of the segments of the market, and such as the suburban ones, but it doesn't make it a buyer's market by a technicality. Do you know what I mean? Now, whether we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, it's generally irrelevant to you, the person who's watching this, the consumer, unless you are in the market looking to transact in real estate, right? And this is why it's just real estate tends to be gossip everyone talks about. Meaning, if you're a person looking to sell their property right now, it feels like we're in a buyer's market. That means that the market is more advantageous for the buyers right now and not you if you're selling. So that's why you may have some people pulling back on listings, or maybe you have people wanting to list because they think the market's going to continue tumbling down some more. Now, the buyers right now, it's in their advantage because they have more choice, they have more selection, they're less rushed, and ultimately the ones in the driver's seats when it comes to leverage in the transaction. Now, on the flip side, if you're looking to buy a property, it actually is quite advantageous for you right now to start searching, right? Not to sound all realtor-y on you and saying you're gonna buy, but if you're looking for your 10 plus year home, it's actually a pretty good time to start looking, right? It actually is, because less competition, prices have come down percentage-wise, but if it's a big home, nominally it's quite a bit. Now, investors, totally different case, as we got to look at cap rates relative to what the yields are right now, and that's totally a video for a different day, but you let me know in the comment section below if you want me to make that video so that I can break it down for you in more like bite-sized pieces. Now, in a seller's market, which is what we saw from January of this year, 2022, to March this year, 2022, it was advantageous to be selling your home, meaning as a seller's market, because we had all the demand in the world that everyone just jumped for it in the start of January. And the sellers were in like a driver's seat and making all the decision, because ultimately when you have 20 unconditional offers being thrown at you in like a 3-hour window after like a few days of showings and bully offers, you could essentially dictate the terms and whatever conditions you want in the contract. So hyper big seller's market at that time. So right now it feels like we're in a buyer's market, but we're actually not as a whole market in the GTA, right? To Greater Toronto area. The latest months of inventory data shows that we have about 2.1 months of inventory, and technically that is still a seller's market, albeit a super week one, but we haven't quite stepped forward into a buyer's market officially just yet. We'll need to transition from like 2.1 months of inventory to about 5 months of inventory before it's technically considered a buyer's market. Again, that's just a technical term, but it definitely feels like a buyer's market. Meaning inventory needs to more than double, or a combination of inventory doubling or increasing, plus the sales slow down, which, by the way, is very much a possibility as we are heading into the summer. The question is, we don't know how many people are going to list their house in the summer, right? Now, would I be surprised if we saw 3 months of inventory in the next week when the market watch comes out? No, absolutely not. I'm actually kind of expecting it. Now, if this is the type of real estate content you enjoy, where I kind of give you a lay of the land of where I think the market's heading, then make sure you guys click the like button and subscribe to the Prime Properties channel, because this helps us share the knowledge and all the content out there so that people can also understand what's going on in the market, because there's a lot of clickbaity headlines, and sometimes I'm guilty of doing that to bring you into watching this video. But the idea here is to give you some information and knowledge about what's going on so that we can be transparent and honest. And by doing so, we hope that whenever you are ready to transact in the real estate market, whether it's buying, selling, or investing, you'll be like, Zen and his team, and you think of us and you give us a call and schedule a strategy session with me using the link right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Now, back to what we were saying earlier. Granted, there are obviously like specific regions when you break it out inside out of the GTA that I've talked about before, where we had major price drops. the months of inventory there is getting dangerously high and very much in already a balanced market. So it just needs to like increase a little bit to get into a seller's market, right? So these are regions I've talked about before, where such as Milton, Aurora, King City, Richmond Hill. There's a lot of cities in like the Dufferin County area that's actually in a balanced market already right now. So would I be surprised to see them going into a buyer's market soon? No, not at all. Now, one of the reasons it feels like we're in a buyer's market, but again, technically we're not, is because of this chart right here. Now, I've shown this chart many times in different iterations with different plots now, and this is courtesy from Ben of Edge Analytics, and it basically shows you the rate of change of the price, right? So whether it goes up or goes down as a percentage from last month on the y-axis. So this is the vertical one, right? Because I know this chart's a little bit hard to read. And then you got the months of inventory on the x-axis, which is the horizontal one. And you can see that normally you can only start seeing prices drop below that y-axis at 0 when the months of inventory goes over 5, right? And the top left corner of the red dots were the crazy months we had, leading up to 2022 and from 2022 January to February, where prices just went bonkers and crazy. But on the bottom left side, which we've never had any plots before until the last 3 months, is April, May, June, where prices drop despite having low inventory. And again, technically being in the seller's market. So the last 3 months of the trends on this chart broke the chart. So it's the only time we've ever seen the market have a price decrease where we're still technically in a seller's market. Wow, right? So this is exactly why, it feels like a buyer's market, but it's still technically in a seller's market. Again, I totally feel the fact that it's in a buyer's market very much right now too. And we are seeing inventory still remain super low, but prices are dropping as well, which again, we've never seen this before. And that's exactly why it feels like a buyer's market right now. Now, ultimately, I think this trend is going to continue where we probably see some more price drops because we're going to see another 75 basis point rate hike likely in July. And I've been saying this a lot in the last few weeks, right? Like to give us kind of like a short-term horizon of where I think it's going to go. If a lot of inventory builds up in the summer, meaning our months of inventory increases, and it really depends on whether inflation stays high or not to determine whether we get more interest rate hikes. So we got one in July 13th, which is scheduled, and the next one's like September 7th, right? So if the central banks continue hiking rates because we see high inflation while having a high inventory that gets built up into the summer onto the second announcement in September, like the next second announcement, then we're probably in for some prolonged trouble in the real estate market. If we start to see inflation stabilize and we get no more year-over-year growth, and we're not expecting the rate hike on September 7th, and inventory remains kind of where we are, around 2, 2.5, maybe 3, I think prices should stabilize. Keyword, stabilize, not coming back to February pricing, right? So I don't think that's happening anytime soon, by the way, if anyone's ever asking or wondering. Now, if we see no rate hikes and high inventory, this one's kind of hard to predict, as I think it's going to be very sentiment based and whether people have to move at that moment, right? But remember this. Nobody, no matter how good they are or how big a YouTube following, that they have, has a crystal ball or can predict the future of what's going to happen. So don't base your decisions on that person or myself either, right? Just remember that we're all kind of doing our best to take a calculated guess as what's to come, and no one can definitively say 100% it's going to happen. So make sure whatever this is you're doing, have some critical thinking behind it before you make the decision. Now, what I can say that whether the market is good or bad, there's always going to be transactions in the real estate market. It's not going to be dead because lives change. People have to move for jobs, separation, marriage, or whatever, and so on. So they have to move. So there are still going to be real estate transactions regardless. But whether you want to be opportunistic, if you say, have to move into your 10-year-old home, like I was saying earlier in the video, then yeah, it's up to you. But you make sure you do your own due diligence to make sure that it works for you. And if you're in this situation and want to see kind of how like the bigger picture thinking applies to your specific situation, you can book a call with me using the link on the screen right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.